Chattahoochee State Hospital. Patients swore they saw faceless figures crawling along the walls at night. Nurses whispered of children crying in empty wards. And even decades after the hospital's closure, trespassers have come out pale, shaken, and swearing they heard voices in the halls. The Chattahoochee State Hospital, also known as Florida State Hospital, was once considered progressive when it opened in the 19th century, but by the 20th century, it gained a reputation as one of the darkest psychiatric facilities in the South. Reports surfaced of overcrowding so severe that patients were crammed into filthy rooms, chained to beds, or locked away in padded cells. Electroshock therapy and lobotomies were used regularly. Thousands of patients lived, and many passed away inside its walls. When parts of the hospital were finally shut down, the silence was worse than the chaos. Paranormal investigators say the atmosphere is crushing, like the building itself wants you gone. Cold spots move through the halls, even in the Florida heat, and voices whisper help and leave on EVP recordings. The underground tunnels, once used to discreetly transport patients, are considered the most terrifying. People who step inside describe overwhelming nausea, headaches, and in some cases, scratches appearing on their skin. Former staff have admitted that they themselves refuse to enter certain wards alone, even in broad daylight. Shadowy figures crossing hallways, objects moving on their own, and the constant feeling of being followed are so common that even skeptics walk out uneasy. Would you visit this place? Let me know. The Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables. Now, firearm explosives rang out on the 13th floor of the Biltmore Hotel in 1929, and a mobster named Thomas Fatty Walsh ran out on the expensive carpet. Ever since, guests claim his ghost never left. Doors slam with no explanation, glasses clink in empty bars, and his shadowy figure has been seen in mirrors. The Biltmore wasn't just a hotel for Florida's elite. During World War II, it was converted into a military hospital. The luxurious ballrooms turned into operating rooms where young soldiers passed away on red liquid-stained floors. Now, after the war, the Biltmore went through years of abandonment. By the 1960s and 70s, its windows were shattered, the once grand lobby sat rotting, and graffiti marked the walls. But visitors claim the glamour hadn't faded entirely because the ghosts kept the hotel alive. Those who entered illegally during its abandoned years described chandeliers swaying violently despite still air, stretchers rolling across dark hallways, and even phantom footsteps echoing down marble staircases. The sounds, of firearms going off are believed to be the echoes of Walsh's assassination, and they were reported so often that even local police stopped investigating. Some said the elevators would move on their own, opening to reveal no one, but reeking of cigar smoke, which was Walsh's signature scent. Now, when the Biltmore was eventually restored and reopened, the hauntings actually continued. Guests still check out early, saying they can't shake the feeling of being watched. Staff members admit that some rooms are harder to rent than others because of how often guests complain about seeing figures standing at the edge of the bed. That's terrifying. The Devil's School in Jacksonville. Now, they call it the Devil's School for a reason. Teens dared each other to break inside only to come running out screaming. Stories spread of a headless janitor who still roams the halls, children's screams echoing from the burned out basement, and satanic rituals performed inside the gymnasium. The real name of the school was Annie Lytle Elementary, built in 1917. Now, when it first opened, it was a proud, grand building with arched windows and a reputation as one of Jacksonville's most impressive schools. But by the 1960s, it had fallen into disrepair. Now, the neighborhood deteriorated, attendance dropped, and eventually the school was just shuttered. Now, once the children were gone, that's when the legends began. Locals whispered about satanic cults meeting there, and graffiti of, pentagrams and strange symbols appeared overnight. Homeless squatters claimed they were chased out by unseen forces. Fires broke out inside with no explanation at all, leading some to believe the building itself was just cursed. Paranormal investigators captured EVP recordings of children's laughter and cries for help despite the building being empty for decades. Urban explorers describe a sense of just suffocation the moment they step inside. Now, the windows are shattered, trees grow through cracks in the roof, and the smell of mold mixes with something more metallic, something like dried red liquid. Now, cameras malfunction regularly, batteries drain instantly, and even seasoned ghost hunters refuse to enter the basement, where the atmosphere is said to be just completely unbearable. Now, some say the spirits are the children who once studied there, trapped by tragedy. Others insist something darker moved in, maybe after their abandonment. Either way, the Devil's School has earned its reputation, clearly, as one of Florida's most haunted ruins. The Dozier School for Boys. Now, few abandoned places in Florida carry a history as horrifying as the Dozier School for Boys. Now, survivors describe it as a nightmare of attacks, torment, and demise. And when the truth was uncovered, investigators found nearly 100 bodies buried in hidden graves there. The school operated for more than 100 years in Marianna, Florida. It was actually meant to be a reform school, a place where troubled boys could be rehabilitated. Instead, it became infamous for brutal, attacks, forced labor, and very cruel punishments. Former students, describe being taken to a small white building known as the White House, where guards whipped them until, they were leaking, of red liquid, which we know what that is. Sometimes until they actually lost consciousness. Now, some boys never came out at all. When the state finally investigated in the 2000s, they discovered a secret graveyard. Dozens of unmarked graves held the remains of boys who had disappeared. Many were never identified, their families never told the truth, so we don't know who these boys are. Today, the school remains, it stands as one of the darkest abandoned places in not only Florida, but all of America. Paranormal reports are overwhelming, disembodied voices, chains dragging across the ground, and cries in the distance. Some visitors claim they've been touched or even grabbed by invisible hands. EVP recordings capture chilling words like help and stop and please don't leave. Even skeptics admit the site feels very cursed. Investigators describe heavy, very oppressive air that grows worse near that whole, White House building. Cameras often pick up orbs as well, streaks of light and shadows moving where no one is even standing. I mean, survivors say it doesn't surprise them. The boys who passed away there never got any justice at all. So of course, their spirits may still be crying out for help. Stiltsville in Biscayne Bay. Now, in the middle of Biscayne Bay, 7 ghostly houses balance on wooden stilts above the water. Once, they were actually alive with illegal gambling, wild parties, and mafia connections, which sounds kind of fun, right? Not really. Today, they're silent ruins. Locals say the ghosts of Stiltsville haven't left. They're still there partying in the dark. Maybe we should go check it out. Stiltsville began in the 1930s as a hidden playground for the wealthy and the rich. Now, rumors spread of high-stakes poker games, secret deals, but also very violent disputes that ended, in you-know-what. By the 1950s, Stiltsville had grown into a thriving offshore village known as much for its lawlessness as its exclusivity. But nature had other plans, of course. Hurricanes repeatedly battered the houses, sweeping many into the sea, and by the 1990s, only a handful remained. Today, the skeletal remains of those houses rise eerily out of the bay. I mean, you can see them. Fishermen report strange lights flickering in the windows, even though no electricity runs through them at all. Boaters hear music drifting across the waves, jazz and swing tunes from an era long gone. I mean, they're still partying there. Some claim they've seen figures standing on the docks kind of waving, only to vanish as the boat draws closer. Paranormal investigators believe the energy of Stiltsville comes from the combination of its violent past and its watery graveyard of ruined homes. Some boats have reported being, chased down by glowing lights at night, as if something is still kind of guarding the bay there. The location is remote and isolated, which of course only adds to its ghostly aura. To this day, few dare to explore the houses after dark. So let me know, which abandoned place in Florida would you visit if you were brave enough? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. These dark amusement parks are hiding more than just old rusty roller coasters. Nope, they're hiding pure evil, so let's take a look into them. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. This is the playground of doom. A little girl in a bright pink dress was riding her favorite attraction, the simple spinning, swing set when tragedy struck. She was laughing one moment, and the next she was crushed by a delivery truck that backed into the ride while it was still in motion. Witnesses claimed her body flew several feet before collapsing to the ground. She was only one of at least 6 people who passed away at Lake Shawnee Amusement Park in Princeton, West Virginia, a place so cursed that locals now call it the Playground of Doom. But here's the chilling part. This land was doomed long before the rides were even built. In the late 1700s, it was the site of a very bad annihilation where a Native American tribe basically unalived a settler family for stealing their land. Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Imagine checking into a hotel so haunted that it inspired one of the most terrifying horror novels ever written. That's the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the real-life inspiration behind Stephen King's The Shining. One chilling story goes like this. Guests in room 217 have woken up to see a woman standing at the foot of their bed. She doesn't scream, she doesn't move, she simply stares. Her name is said to be Elizabeth Wilson, a housekeeper who nearly passed away in a gas explosion in that very room in 1911. Guests have reported their luggage mysteriously unpacked, lights flickering on their own, and even blankets being tucked tightly around them at night, like a ghostly maid still kind of tending to her duties. But that's not the only room that terrifies visitors. Room 401 is haunted by a ghost named Lord Dunraven, who originally owned the land before the Stanley was built. Guests have complained of being watched, hearing footsteps pacing, and even having their jewelry stolen by unseen hands. The children's laughter in the hallways, despite no kids being booked on that floor, only makes it worse. Stephen King and his wife stayed here in 1974, and during the night he reportedly dreamed of his son running through the endless hallways screaming. That nightmare became the seed for The Shining. Ever since, Stanley has been a magnet for ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. Even the cast of Ghost Hunters caught a piano playing itself in the ballroom. For decades, terrified visitors have left in the middle of the night, unable to endure the strange voices, cold spots, and the overwhelming sense of dread that seems to seep through the walls. Some even say that once you step into the Stanley, the hotel decides if it wants you to leave or stay forever. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Guests call it America's most haunted hotel, and they're not exaggerating. The Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas has been the site of tragic demises, sinister experiments, and an endless parade of restless spirits. But the most terrifying story starts with a man named Norman Baker. In the 1930s, Baker, a con artist masquerading as a doctor, bought the hotel and turned it into a cancer hospital. He claimed he had a cure, but what patients really got was torment. Baker injected patients with dangerous concoctions, locked them in rooms, and let them waste away. Hundreds passed away inside the Crescent's walls, their bodies buried in the basement, now known as the morgue. Guests today say they hear the moans of those patients echoing through the halls. Some report seeing shadowy figures in hospital gowns wandering aimlessly at night. Now, the most famous ghost is Michael, a stonemason who fell to his demise while building the hotel in 1885. Guests in room 218 say they've seen his figure appear suddenly, slamming doors, shaking the bed, or even pushing people. Then there's the ghost of a little girl in a Victorian dress who often appears near the stairwells. Some say she's looking for her mother, as others believe she's one of Baker's forgotten victims. One hotel employee swears she saw the girl run across the lobby only to vanish in front of their eyes. In recent years, archaeologists actually uncovered jars of human tissue buried on the property, direct evidence of Baker's gruesome experiments. This discovery confirmed that the Crescent isn't just haunted by rumors, but by the real suffering of the people who passed away there. If you check in, don't be surprised if you hear whispers at 3 a.m. or if the elevator suddenly takes you to the basement on its own. The Crescent Hotel has a way of showing you its secrets, whether you want to see them or not. The Queen Mary Hotel in Long Beach, California. Now, the Queen Mary isn't just a hotel, it's a massive retired ocean liner that sailed the seas from 1936 to 1967. But once it was docked in Long Beach and converted into a floating hotel, the hauntings began to spill out. The Queen Mary is said to be one of the most haunted places in the world, with at least 150 spirits roaming its corridors. But the scariest stories are centered around its engine room and swimming pool. In the engine room, door 13 has claimed the life of at least 2 men, one crushed to demise during a drill. Now, guests and crew report seeing a man in blue overalls walking near the door only for him to vanish into thin air. The temperature drops instantly, and sometimes greasy handprints appear on the walls where no one was standing. Then there's the haunted swimming pool. Though it's been drained for years, visitors report the sound of splashing, laughter, and wet footprints appearing on the tiles. Two women are said to haunt the spot, both actually passed in mysterious circumstances in the pool. One ghost, nicknamed Jackie, is often heard calling for her parents. Some guests claim to have recorded her voice even. Now, during World War II, the Queen Mary carried troops that was nicknamed the Great Ghost. Hundreds of men passed away aboard, and many never left. Now, today, paranormal investigators have captured everything from, screams in the infirmary to shadowy figures crossing hallways in front of startled guests. Staying overnight means sleeping among restless souls who never completed their voyage. One former hotel guest described being woken up by a man standing over her bed, dripping wet, staring blankly before vanishing. Another swore her bathroom lights flickered on and off repeatedly with the sound of running water, but the faucets were bone dry. The Queen Mary's haunted reputation is so infamous that even skeptics walk away shaken. The Mizpah Hotel, this is in Tonopah, Nevada. Now, if you've ever wanted to sleep in a room where a ghost might crawl into bed with you, the Mizpah Hotel in Nevada might be your nightmare come true. The most infamous ghost here is known as the Lady in Red. According to legend, she was a working woman of the night. Hopefully you catch my drift. Anyway, she was a woman who lived and worked at that hotel during the early 1900s. Depending on the story, she was there assassinated by a jealous lover or actually beaten to her demise by a client. Her spirit never left though. Guests in the Lady in the Red room report waking up to find pearls scattered across the floor as if she left behind her broken necklace. Some men have even claimed to feel her climbing into bed beside them, whispering softly in their ear before vanishing. Others say she leaves behind the strong scent of roses or expensive perfume even. But the Lady in Red isn't the only ghost stalking the Mizpah. There are stories of children running through the hallways, laughing one minute, crying the next. The phantom miner is said to wander the basement, a reminder, that this rough gold rush past that they had. Now, the Mizpah's history makes its hauntings all too believable. Built in 1907, it was once one of the most luxurious hotels in Nevada, but it also sat in a mining town filled with violence, gambling, and sudden demises. Countless tragedies unfolded behind its walls, giving birth to restless spirits. The hotel closed in 1999 and sat abandoned for years. During this time, paranormal investigators documented eerie whispers, slamming doors, and even a figure in a red dress captured on film. Since reopening in 2011, guests continue to leave with stories of encounters that prove the Lady in Red has no intention of ever checking out. The Crescent City's Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is already known as one of the most haunted cities in America, but the Hotel Monteleone might be its most unsettling treasure. This French Quarter landmark has been family-owned since 1886, and over the decades, countless guests have sworn it's alive with spirits. The creepiest stories revolve around the 14th floor, though technically it's actually the 13th floor that was, renumbered to avoid superstition. Guests here have seen ghostly children running through the halls, laughing and vanishing through the walls. The most famous of these spirits is a boy named Maurice Beguer, who passed away in the hotel after a fever. Now, his parents were longtime guests, and when his mother returned, she swore she could still hear Maurice calling to her. To this day, guests say they hear a child's voice saying "mummy," in the still of night. The hotel also has a haunted restaurant area where patrons see men in tuxedos from another era raising glasses before disappearing. Elevators are known to stop on the wrong floor, doors opening to empty hallways filled with sudden cold air. Authors like Tennessee Williams and William Faulkner stayed here, and some claim the atmosphere of the hotel itself fuels creativity, though others believe it's because the spirits of the deceased linger so close to the living. One guest reported waking up to see a man standing at the foot of her bed, dressed in a 1920s suit. She blinked and he was gone, but the strong smell of cigar smoke filled the room, even though smoking is banned in the hotel. The Monteleone embraces its haunted reputation, but make no mistake, this is not just marketing. Paranormal groups have reportedly captured strange orbs, phantom voices, and even full-body apparitions. Now, in a city overflowing with ghost stories, the Monteleone, still manages to terrify. Which haunted hotel would you stay at for a weekend if you could? Let me know. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. I'll see you later. Have you ever been to Florida? Well, if you were planning your next getaway there, this might make you reconsider. These creepy abandoned places still holding ghosts will make you cancel that flight you got booked. The old Chattahoochee State Hospital. Patients swore they saw faceless figures crawling along the walls at night. Nurses whispered of children crying in empty wards. And even decades after the hospital's closure, trespassers have come out pale, shaken, and swearing they heard voices in the halls. The Chattahoochee State Hospital, also known as Florida State Hospital, was once considered progressive when it opened in the 19th century, but by the 20th century, it gained a reputation as one of the darkest psychiatric facilities in the South. Reports surfaced of overcrowding so severe that patients were crammed into filthy rooms, chained to beds, or locked away in padded cells. Electroshock therapy and lobotomies were used regularly. Thousands of patients lived, and many passed away inside its walls. Jefferson, Texas, in eastern Texas near the Arkansas and Louisiana borders, would-be ghost hunters will run across the town of Jefferson and the haunted Jefferson Hotel. It's been in operation since the late 1800s. This historic hotel and one-time brothel has borne witness to a healthy dose of Texas history. The hotel started recording the guests' encounters with the ghost hauntings, its rooms and corridors, like the vanishing man, who comes and goes and stomps around as he pleases in the hotel's Book of the Deceased. Now, a stay here could have you bumping into all kinds of tormented souls, including Judy, an adult entertainment worker, likely unalived in the hotel, allegedly. She now writes her name in the condensed steam left on mirrors after patrons take a hot shower. This hotel is known as the most haunted hotel in the world. Talk about terrifying, right? Burke, Idaho. Now, Burke is a nearly abandoned mining town that kind of boomed in the latter part of the 19th century, then later went bust. The settlement, wedged into an exceptionally narrow mountain valley, is 300 feet across at its most constricted point. The lack of space forced the railroad to run down the main street and forced builders to get creative when designing buildings able to fit into such a confined space. Now, due to a very violent history plagued by fights and basically dynamite sabotage between mine owners and labor, plus the passings caused by just, avalanches, locals might advise avoiding Burke at night. Of course, if you happen to be looking for a run-in with a ghost or two, nighttime is when the deceased apparently come out to play. Bangor, Maine. Now, one of Bangor's most famous residents, author Stephen King, dwells in a mansion here. Now, that's surely reason enough to include Bangor on my list of creepy towns. Mount Hope Cemetery, where a college-age King used to hang out, is another great reason to go. King is said to have come up with character names and some of his scariest story ideas here. Now, scenes from the 1989 film adaptation of Pet Sematary were even actually filmed at this site. The cemetery, founded in 1836, is one of the first garden cemeteries to ever open in the United States. Mount Hope Cemetery Corp and Crematory has a well-earned reputation for being haunted, with reports of apparitions, shadows, and even children's voices. Mount Hope is full of old, distinctive tombstones that inspired one of America's most famous authors, a writer who has spent his career, creeping out a nation and a planet with his horrifying tales. Seward, Alaska. Seward is home to ruins of one of the most tragic incarnations of the Jessie Lee Home for Children. While other orphanages of the same name have operated in Alaska, this location, abandoned after 1964's Great Alaskan Earthquake, which by the way had a magnitude of 9.2, has an exceptionally unfortunate history. Apparently, the ghosts of children who perished during the earthquake still actually haunt the premises today. The pitter-patter of little feet running around, along with the sounds of just skipping rope and giggling tots, are the most common reports coming from those living souls brave enough to actually explore this decaying orphanages. Now, a massive gloomy feeling seems to descend upon all who spend any time here. The Van Gelder Hotel, which is also in Seward, is also rumored to be haunted by a woman who was assassinated in room 202, with some claiming to see her ghost described as a very tall, blonde woman in a blue dress. Now, this town is just riddled with paranormal activity. Remind me to add it to my bucket list. Deadwood, South Dakota. If you've ever, caught an episode of the HBO series Deadwood, you already know who Sheriff Seth Bullock is. If not, a visit to the Bullock Hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota will acquaint you with him very quickly, as his ghost still spends an awful lot of time there. Bullock and Solstar built the hotel in 1895. Being a sheriff, you might guess, that Seth met a grim kind of bullet-riddled demise, but he actually passed away of cancer in 1919. Bullock turned showers on and off, ensures that the living staff, isn't just kind of lollygagging lollygagging about, and generally likes to make his presence known to all who venture inside his guest house. Several locations aside from the Bullock Hotel, including the Fairmont Hotel, Franklin Hotel, and Saloon Number 10, are frequently cited as particularly haunted. Now, the town's history as a Wild West boomtown with a violent past, including the assassination of Wild Bill Hickok, contributes to its eerie reputation. Ghost tours are usually held at their bars, brothels, and gaming halls, so check it out if you're ever there and report back. Bannack, Montana is actually said to be haunted by Sheriff Henry Plummer. Now, Bannack, Montana is a classic gold rush ghost town. It was founded in 1862 and was home to 10,000 people at its height before it was actually abandoned. Now, it was also home to Henry Plummer, whose, biography basically seems tailor-made for ghost stories. Before arriving in Bannack, Plummer was a sheriff of Nevada County, California, where he was known for playing both sides of the law and where he was eventually joined, by kind of a group of bandits. Now, upon arriving in Bannack to prospect for gold, Plummer again convinced the townspeople to elect him sheriff. Details are sketchy about what happened next. Now, at the time, a group of road agents called the Innocents were terrorizing the town, and it's unclear whether Plummer himself was the founder, and leader of the group. Either way, a group of panicked miners eventually formed a posse and kind of unalived several innocent people, as well as the sheriff. However, it is also possible the Innocents fabricated Plummer's involvement in the group to lessen their culpability and unalived him themselves. Grave robbers later decapitated his body, according to local legend. If you ever kind of wander through Bannack, you might see the headless sheriff's ghost. Another terrifying story from the same town, though, is of a young girl named Dorothy Dunn. She tragically actually drowned in a dredge pond. Now, her demise is said to be linked to sightings of a young girl in a blue dress, often seen in the Mizpah Hotel. Beyond specific stories, there are reports just generally of cold spots, unexplained sounds, and other ghostly phenomena in various locations within Bannack. Definitely sounds like just one big haunted town, am I right? Batsto Village in New Jersey. This town is said to be the stomping grounds of the Jersey Devil. Well, that doesn't sound so good. Now, Batsto is yet another abandoned American settlement, only instead of being home to a ghost, it's home to a legendary cryptid. Now, it was founded in 1766 to support an ironworks that supplied the Continental Army and was inhabited for the next 110 years. Today, the remains of Batsto are part of the 1.1 million acre forest known as the Pine Barrens. That forest is also home to the legendary Jersey Devil, which means tons of unconfirmed, vaguely written reports of people seeing the creature at Batsto Village. Now, according to legend, the Jersey Devil is, the cursed 13th child of a New Jersey woman named Mrs. Leeds, who gave birth to it in 1735, making it almost 300 years old. It's described as a kangaroo-like creature with the face of a horse, the head of a dog, and bat-like wings, horns, and a tail, and feeds on livestock. Numerous accounts suggest that ghosts are frequently observed roaming the grounds, of Batsto Village. Today, Batsto Village is a popular tourist destination with over 40 sites and structures open for visitors, despite its reputation as a haunted location. Grafton, Utah. Grafton is known as a ghost town with a history of paranormal activity, and some believe its cemetery is indeed haunted. Visitors have reported strange noises, ghostly apparitions, and an overall feeling of just otherworldly presence, suggesting the spirits of the original settlers, may linger there. The town's cemetery, with over 80 graves, is particularly rumored to be haunted, with reports of infants crying and a woman walking through a lonely graveyard. It's said to also be haunted by a sobbing woman who kind of wanders the cemetery at night. Now, not all ghost towns are former mining settlements. In 1859, 5 Mormon families settled along the Virgin River just outside of what's now Utah's Zion National Park. They called their settlement Wheeler, and when the Civil War began the following year, they focused on planting cotton. But in 1862, a flood wiped out most of Wheeler. Now, it was rebuilt and renamed Grafton, but floods periodically continued, as well as illnesses and raids by Indigenous Americans. Now, only 28 people lived in Grafton in 1864, according to the census. Most abandoned it by 1890, and by 1909, only 3 families actually remained, and by 1945, it was finally deserted for good. It's since been used as a backdrop for Western films like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now, like many abandoned, frontier towns, Grafton also has had its very good share of ghost sightings. Ghost hunters have heard crying infants and seen a woman walking again through the town cemetery. history. Calico, California, a Calico ghost town in California, is well known for its paranormal activity and ghost stories, making it a very popular destination for those interested in the supernatural. Now, visitors and locals alike have reported experiencing very strange noises, unexplained chills in their body, and even seeing shadowy figures or spectral apparitions, within the town's buildings and streets. Now, this town is said to be haunted by school children and teachers. Prospectors found silver in the Calico Mountains in 1875, and by the early 1880s, the fledgling town of Calico was home to about 2,500 people. But when the Silver Purchase Act of 1890 lowered silver prices, the town became a ghost of its former self. Residents began moving away, and by 1935, it was deserted completely. Now, according to local legend, Calico is home to a variety of spirits, many of whom inhabit, the ruins of the former schoolhouse. Visitors claim to have seen both teachers and students haunting the building, as well as a mysterious red ball of light. Now, despite these occurrences, in 1950, Knott's Berry farm owner Walter Knott purchased the land on which Calico sat and restored the remains of the town. In 1966, Knott donated Calico to San Bernardino County. Now, the town's history, with its many colorful characters and dramatic events, may contribute to the stories of hauntings. The remote location is isolated, and the town may also, enhance the sense of mystery and paranormal activity. Starting with the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific, which is also known as the Columbia River Gorge. This place is located on the Oregon-Washington border and is a scenic and popular tourist destination. However, this area has been dubbed the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific due to the unusually high number of unexplained disappearances and accidents. One such incident occurred in 1955 when a group of three friends, Jimmy, Bob, and Bill, embarked on a fishing trip in the gorge. Now, despite being experienced outdoorsmen, they failed to return, and an extensive search effort yielded, no signs of the missing men. They couldn't be found. Now, the most famous incident that has recently come back in the spotlight is the Martin family. Now, in December of 1958, the Martin family, Kenneth, Barbara, and their three daughters vanished while on a trip to the gorge to gather Christmas greenery. Now, a Ford station wagon believed to be theirs was recently found in the Columbia River, potentially shedding light on their disappearance. In 1958, the family never returned, and 2 days later, they were reported missing when Kenneth and Barbara failed to show up for work. Officials narrowed, their search after learning that Ken had used a credit card, yes, they had them back then, to buy gas at a station near Cascade Locks, which is a small Columbia River community about 40 miles east of Portland. Now, police investigated their residence at approximately 11 p.m., searching for any signs of foul play. The house had been left undisturbed, though. A load of laundry was in the washing machine. Dishes from the previous day were left out on the drying rack in the kitchen. There was also a substantial amount of money in the Martins' bank accounts. Now, a Ford station wagon believed to be the Martins was recently found in the river, like no joke, a few months ago. So this is nearly 70 years later. A diver by the name of Archer Mayo discovered the vehicle, and officials believe it could be the same car the Martins were driving when they disappeared. After 2 days of dredging, a crane pulled the Ford station wagon from the river. But get this, no human remains were found in the vehicle. This is an insane cold case. The Columbia River Gorge's, unique geography with its steep cliffs and powerful currents may contribute to the high incidence of accidents. However, many believe that the area is cursed and that supernatural forces are at work. Pecos, New Mexico is up next. Now, this sleepy New Mexico town is known in the area for its numerous disappearances. Pecos is a seemingly normal village, an upcoming vacation destination amid the pine forests of New Mexico. Now, located just outside of Santa Fe near Pecos National Historical Park, this small town is typically quiet and very quaint, and yet this seemingly normal town is also the site of some pretty strange, disappearances. In 1998, a 71-year-old woman named Emma Tress was driving along a road near a local monastery for a retreat. That road, County Road 63A, ominously known to the locals as Camino del Diablo, was the last known location of Tress. When Emma left her home and was en route to the retreat, a retreat and place that she knew very well, she had traveled that exact route several times prior. The route to the monastery is well known and paved the entire way, and by her children's accounts, Emma was in excellent health and had no known mental issues or no known, bouts of memory loss at that time. Emma's last record of being seen was a gas stop in Santa Rosa, New Mexico at approximately 3 p.m. So she should have, reached the monastery by 4:30 or 5 p.m. with no stops. Now, data from from that date shows it was a perfect New Mexico summer day. Average temperature was 70 degrees, the sun set between 8 and 9 p.m. So even if she took a little detour to hike or take pictures, which she was known to do, she had plenty of daylight to see her way to the final destination. Now, days later, her car was found wrecked nearby, but her body was never found. Strangely, many of Tress's belongings, including her cell phone, were still in the car. Even stranger were the footprints that surrounded the car, clearly made by Tress herself. These footprints circled the car, but didn't head towards the road. Tress simply vanished. Into thin air. Theories range, from the plausible, like a local serial or natural passing in New Mexico's dangerous forest and desert, terrain, to the supernatural, like a UFO abduction or accidentally walking into a portal to another dimension. Now, Nancy Tress, her daughter, had a message to the public in hopes of getting any information that could possibly still be out there. She said, if you know anything and you've heard anything in the past, please come forward. Tress said she and her family have not given up hope that they could find out what happened to their mother. She said, whatever happened, it's probably going to be painful, but you always want to know where your parent is. I don't want to say it's closure. I hate that word. The haunted highway, Route 66 in Arizona. Now, Route 66, also known as the Mother Road, is one of America's most iconic highways. However, a stretch of this road in Arizona has earned a reputation for being haunted, with numerous tourists disappearing while driving through the area. Now, in 1959, a family of 3, including a young person, vanished while driving along the road. Now, their abandoned car was found, but despite an extensive search effort, no bodies were ever recovered. Years later, in 1975, a group of friends, including 2 women, disappeared while driving through the exact same area. Now, their car was found abandoned with strange symbols etched into the dashboard. Many believe that this stretch of Route 66 is haunted by the spirits of those who have passed in accidents or been executed along the road. Others, attribute the disappearances to the area's remote location and lack of cell phone reception. Now, considering the thousands of miles and hundreds of small towns this famous route runs through, including a few of America's most notorious ghost towns, it's no wonder that Route 66, is widely considered America's most haunted highway. But when it comes to spooky spots, there are a few that can hold a candle to the ones you find in Arizona, where Route 66 runs through some of the most notorious ghost stories in the American Old West. From the town of Flagstaff with its mountain views and haunted hotels to Williams, known for being the gateway to the Grand Canyon, as well as an energy vortex and spiritual center. This historic stretch of highway has been turning heads for nearly a century. When it comes to haunted attractions in Arizona, as well as famous sections of Route 66 that are still seeing, high volumes of daily drivers, there are a few that enjoy the lore and legacy of Flagstaff. Now, here more than anywhere, Route 66 is still alive and well, which is more than can be said for the slew of notorious ghosts that inhabit the sleepy mountain town, haunting their historic buildings and making Flagstaff a must-stop for paranormal attractions. Now, from a long-departed bellboy to a library that has seen its fair share of horrors down in the basement, it would be difficult to assume which corner of Flagstaff is the most haunted. But when it comes to historic haunts right off of Route 66, few have had the impact of the Weatherford Hotel. Now, it's in this popular downtown hotel that spirits can be seen roaming the halls at night, especially around the maid's storage room, and hotel staff have been through everything from bottles being thrown off shelves, lights and jukeboxes, coming on and in the middle of the night, and it just goes to show that when it comes to the strange and unusual, Route 66 Flagstaff has remained a touchstone, offering devilish delights alongside its outdoor attractions, world-class restaurants, and Old West history. Fourth on my list is Yosemite National Park in California. Now, in 1983, a family was exploring Summit Meadow off Glacier Road when one of the children discovered a severed hand and forearm. In spite of consistent searches from investigators, no other body parts were found, and authorities were unable to identify the victim or make progress on the case. Now, in 1988, a skull was found across the street from the site, but the Park Service still couldn't attach a name to the victim. It wasn't until 2022 that the Park Service, using DNA profile from the remains, named the victim, who was Patricia Hicks, a woman linked to a local cult leader who allegedly used LSD to weaken and disorient victims. Now, the man had been convicted of essaying women back in the 1980s, but disappeared before he was incarcerated. But according to a 2022 report by the San Francisco Gate and a 2022 episode of the ABC News show Wild Crime, investigators think the cult connection was incidental and that Hicks was actually unalived by the notorious serial person Henry Lee Lucas, who confessed to hundreds of slayings across the nation. Now, Lucas at the time of his arrest revealed details about the Summit Meadow crime scene that had not been released in the media. Now, still the details that Lucas gave regarding the incident and victim were deemed, circumstantial, so the case remains unsolved. Lucas passed away in prison in 2001, and the question of who is behind the demise of Patricia Hicks may never be solved. Lastly, I have Grand Canyon National Park, Arizona, and the newlyweds who disappeared. The Grand Canyon might be best known for its 5,000-foot walls, but the rapids at the bottom of the gorge are huge as well. Native Americans likely traveled the canyon for hundreds of years, but the first European American documented as navigating it was John Wesley Powell in 1869. Since then, roughly 100 people have drowned in the rapids. Now, arguably the most famous and mysterious drowning or incident happened in 1928, when the newlyweds Glenn and Bessie Hyde attempted to paddle their Grand Canyon on their honeymoon. Now, they were in a boat that Glenn had built himself, attempting a speed record paddle through the canyon that would also have made Bessie the first woman to run it. The Hydes were last seen on November 18th, and their boat was found intact with all of their supplies a month later on December 19th. Now, the boat was in perfect condition with all of the contents, including Bessie's diary, intact. Now, search parties, basically scoured the canyon, but their bodies were never found. It's possible and probable that the couple was washed out of the boat during one of the rapids and the vessel continued downstream without them. But Glenn and Bessie were both experienced rafters. A popular theory has emerged over the years that Bessie unalived her new husband somewhere deep in the canyon. Talk about a good honeymoon, eh? Another river runner, which is Emery Kolb, encountered the couple in the canyon and noted Bessie's hesitance to continue the journey and that they didn't have life jackets. In 1971, a woman named Elizabeth Cutler claimed to be Bessie Hyde, alleging that she attacked her husband during a fight with a sharp object and had been living a different life ever since. Cutler eventually denied the claim, and it was later rumored that the pioneering river runner, Georgie Clark, the first woman to own a commercial rafting business in the Grand Canyon, was actually Bessie Hyde. Now, after Clark passed away in 1992, the Hyde's marriage license was found in her home, as well as a birth certificate identifying Clark as Bessie DeRoss, according to an account by North Arizona University. Now, DeRoss was her birth name. Why she changed her first name to Georgie is unknown. Georgie Clark was married twice and had a daughter who passed away in a bicycle accident. We don't have enough info to say, Clark was the Bessie who disappeared in the Grand Canyon, and some historians have discounted the idea. That's all I got for today. Are you familiar with any of these? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ashley. Until next time, stay scared. These haunted and evil places in Texas are not only hiding evil spirits, but the devil himself, starting with Skinwalker Cabin. The Skinwalker Cabin is located in the town of Wimberley and is said to be haunted by a malevolent entity known as a skinwalker. According to Native American folklore, a skinwalker is a type of shapeshifter that can take on various forms, including humans and animals. Now, the myth also behind skinwalkers is that they are witches from Navajo mythology who can shapeshift into animals like wolves, coyotes, or birds, basically to cause harm. They possess supernatural abilities such as speed, mimicry, and mind control. There are many shapeshifting figures in other cultures around the world as well. In its animal form, the skinwalker is capable of inflicting pain, illness, or even fatality on its victims.
I think I'm going to kick off today with a case from Detroit, Michigan. The mystery of the disappearance of Phyllis Ann Flynn is one that lingers, casting a shadow over the years that have passed since that fateful night in May of 1988, which was before I was born. It's a puzzle that has defied resolution, leaving family and investigators grasping at straws in their quest for answers. After a birthday celebration at the Hotel Yorba in Detroit, Flynn vanished without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are as mysterious as the hotel itself. She had requested that her father pick her up, a plea that would echo throughout the years as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. Now, the timeline of events is hauntingly sparse. A few days after her birthday, Flynn called home, signaling her desire to be retrieved from the Hotel Yorba. However, when her father arrived, she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an eerie void, and nobody has heard from her since. In the years that followed, the case went cold, a perplexing enigma with no breakthroughs. The detective assigned to Flynn's case retired, and the shadows seemed to close in on the scant leads. But even as the official investigation drew to a close, a glimmer of hope persisted among those determined to unravel the mystery. A family friend and a diligent Michigan State police detective breathed some new life into the cold case back in 2014, so about a decade ago, reigniting the flame of inquiry. The Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons brought national attention to Flynn's disappearance. The thrusting it into the spotlight of awareness-building efforts. The passage of time has not dimmed the resolve of those seeking closure. The Missing in Michigan campaign, led by Detective Sarah Krebs, has tirelessly worked to unearth fresh clues. The story of Phyllis Flynn found its place on billboards, a visual plea for information that could hopefully pierce through the fog of uncertainty. But to this day, the question remains: what happened at the Hotel Yorba? The void left by Flynn's disappearance resonates, a silent call for answers. The reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Michigan stands as an incentive, a monetary beacon beckoning anybody with information to step forward. But with the passage of 36 years, the harsh reality is lingering. Flynn's family, against the odds, clings to hope that she might still be alive. But sadly, the Hotel Yorba, once a backdrop to a birthday celebration, now stands as a silent witness to a disappearance that continues to baffle those who seek resolution. So I don't exactly have a name for this next hotel, outside of knowing that it's somewhere in the UK. I know, vague, but it was worth telling today. Imagine a place shrouded in whispers and veiled in the unknown. A hotel that, over the years, has become an unsettling enigma, a backdrop to a haunting mystery that eludes comprehension. It's not your typical story. It's a tale woven with threads of uncertainty and shadowed by the inexplicable disappearances of 66 young people. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, this hotel, with its weathered facade, stands as a testament to a history stained by the unexplained. The corridors echo with the distant laugh of young people who once roamed freely, their footsteps now silenced by a force that transcends the boundaries of our understanding. The first whispers of the mystery dates way back, like decades, a quiet murmur amongst locals who traded stories of curious occurrences. As time unfolded, so did the tales of the vanished youths, leaving a chilling imprint on the history of this seemingly ordinary establishment. Each disappearance, if we're going to compare it to something, maybe a jigsaw piece missing from a larger puzzle, paints a spectral image of uncertainty. The missing people, diverse in their backgrounds, ages, and stories, all converge at this point, their common thread being a vanishing act that perplexes even the most seasoned investigators. The authorities, puzzled and haunted by the lack of clues, have combed through the hotel's history, interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every nook and cranny, but they've got nothing. The answers remain elusive, like ghosts slipping through the fingers of those who seek them. The hotel itself, with its creaking floorboards and flickering lights, becomes a stage where the mundane collides with the mysterious. An invisible hand seems to orchestrate a malevolent symphony, leaving behind a disconcerting silence in the wake of each disappearance. The local community, once welcoming, now gazes upon the hotel with a mix of fear and curiosity. Whispers in the wind suggest that the place holds secrets, that it harbors an otherworldly energy, indifferent to the laws of our reality. As the count of those who have vanished climbed, the hotel's reputation transformed. It became more than bricks and mortar. It was just this living, breathing entity with a story. The rooms, once filled with the innocent laughter of youth, now resonate with an eerie stillness, a reminder of those who stepped into the shadows and never returned. Yeah, that's not somewhere I want to visit. No thank you, I'll leave the mysteries there. I don't need to unravel them. Now next up we have a legend that I believe to be true. Many years ago, an English woman and her daughter, at the conclusion of a tour in the Near East, arrived at a Paris hotel at the time of the exhibition. They were given separate rooms, one above the other. Trust me, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as my mother. After resting for a few hours, the daughter went to go see her mother, but the room was empty and completely altered. Like new wallpaper, new furniture, new everything. She was panicking. She called the maid and then the manager, and the manager was like, "You're under a delusion. When you arrived at this hotel, you were quite alone." But the girl was like, "No, we signed our names in the visitor's book, mother and I." So they brought out the visitor's book, and above the daughter's name, what the mother had signed, was a signature of a stranger. Now, it wasn't until about a year later that the daughter learned that her mother had died suddenly of the plague, and that in order to save Paris from, crazy panic and the exhibition from absolute ruin, it was hurriedly agreed by the authorities that the death should be completely hushed up, and that the daughter should be made to believe, by the repeated denials of hotel servants, hotel managers, and cabmen, and the proofs of, the changed room and the altered visitor's book, that her unfortunate mother never reached the hotel. Imagine, you go to take a nap and you wake up and all of a sudden, okay, mom's gone, and you're Delulu. The girl allegedly found out the truth in a letter from a chambermaid. So when the story was originally told at a dinner at the house of Arthur Balfour, at the time, British Prime Minister, they were all hanging out, and Balfour was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna guess the ending." Now, a journalist for the Pall Mall Gazette, I think this was around 1913, talked to the author who originally published the tale, a Mr. Clement K. Shorter, noting by this time, of course, we've all heard the story. What's the truth to it? And Mr. Shorter's like, "No, I believe it happened. It is a heck of a lot easier to believe that it happened than it was invented." And given an illness under precisely the same circumstances, the French police authorities are the only police authorities in the world who are equal to coping with it so brilliantly. I can't imagine waking up and being told, "Hey, you're completely wrong." "No, thank you. Now for a tale that cursed me to my core, Liz, Sarah, and the Cosmos Resort. 2 years ago, a seemingly ordinary vacation turned into a nightmarish odyssey for a pair of friends, Liz and Sarah. The backdrop? A hotel that, despite its outward appearance of renovation and cheerfulness, concealed a darkness that would shake the very core of their existence. So the girls went in the lobby, they're like, okay, we're gonna go sign in. But there was this feeling of unease that was just sort of everywhere in the air. The check-in process was marked by odd glances and a peculiar conversation with the hotel staff. But they got upgraded. Woohoo! Room 347. This room with a view that won Sarah over. Seemed like, okay, things are getting better. Maybe my gut's just off. Maybe I need a nap. The first night was uneventful for Sarah, but for Liz, the shadows whispered secrets that kept her awake. Strange scratching noises emanated from behind the walls, which, yikes, that's not a soundtrack I want when I'm trying to sleep. And it only got worse as the days went on. A hidden door, concealed behind a nightstand, revealed a narrow, ominous space that reeked of rust and bleach. Yeah, that's terrifying. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered a network of tunnels, a dark labyrinth that extended beneath the hotel. The eerie passageways, laden with a stench of decay, hinted at a sinister purpose, one that became much more apparent as time went on. Liz's disappearance on the final night of their stay plunged Sarah into a desperate search for answers. The hotel staff's nonchalant response and the dismissive attitude of the police created an air of conspiracy. Sure, because the hidden door that led to under the hotel with the stench of decay wasn't enough. Determined to unravel the enigma, Sarah returned to the haunted hotel, guided by an invitation that seemed to taunt her, if you will. The nights after became a harrowing exploration of the hotel's hidden layers. The H sections, neglected and avoided, hinted at a malevolence that defied, well, my brain. The discovery of a bricked-up elevator shaft and the disturbing encounters in the narrow tunnels hinted at a malevolent force that lurked within the hotel's very foundation. So, fast forward, it's the final night, and in a desperate attempt to retrace Liz's steps, Sarah was led to an encounter with entities that, well, weren't of this world. Liz, or a distorted version of her, beckoned from the shadows. The nightmarish entities, with eyes that pierce the darkness, pursued Sarah through the dilapidated corridors, transforming the once grand ballroom into a grotesque spectacle. Now this whole mess reached its climax on the mysterious 7th floor. The revelation that Liz's encounter in the tunnel had birthed something malevolent. Something that wore her face, but harbored unspeakable horrors. Yeah, it painted a bit of a grim picture. The hotel's twisted reality, where time and space lost coherence, left poor Sarah grappling with a profound sense of dread. Now, this sad story concludes with Sarah's escape, but the psychological scars, they run deep. The fear of encountering those otherworldly entities, of witnessing the distorted face of Liz, yeah, that's gonna linger like a memory you don't want to have. The hotel, now a malevolent entity in its own right, kind of stands as a thin veil that separates our world from the other world, and not one you want to go near. Time to travel over to the heart of Santa Fe, and no, that isn't a cue for Newsies and Rent fans, so hush. Nestled within the walls of the La Posada Hotel lies a tale that, well, it's gonna give you some nightmares, folks. It's a narrative steeped in mystery, spectral apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. Cool, we got the whole trifecta. Room 256, once the abode of Julia Staub, echoes with the whispers of a bygone era, where the living and the dead seem to converge in a dance of the paranormal. Is it a ballet? So Chuck Barone, a vigilant security guard, recounted an eerie encounter that unfolded in this specific room of the hotel. In the company of a bellhop and a group of tourists, they approached said room, room 256, responding to a mysterious voice emanating from within. "I'm in here," it beckoned, yet upon investigation, the room was empty, with its windows locked from the inside, so there was no getting out of there. There was a phantom presence. Unseen, but you felt it. The paranormal enigma extended way beyond Chuck's story, by the way. His son John, a fellow guardian of the hotel's secrets, if you will, witnessed a ghostly face in the men's room mirror. It was a woman's face, staring back at him, sending a shiver right down his spine, and this inexplicable encounter left him pale and shaken, which, yeah, that tracks. Ross Weisenhoff, once a skeptic, found himself entangled in the spectral tapestry of the hotel as well. Awakening in the middle of the night, he noticed a luminescent figure at the foot of his bed. This entity morphed into the ethereal form of a woman, fixating on him with an otherworldly gaze. Now this encounter shattered his skepticism, prompting a swift, "I'm getting out of here," as you do. The genesis of these ghostly manifestations lies in the tragic history of Julia, the lady of the mansion turned spectral hostess. She was once the vibrant center of Santa Fe's social tapestry, but fell into self-imposed exile after the loss of her 8th spawn. The Grand Mansion, a testament to love and opulence, transformed into the La Posada Hotel in 1936. Enter Christopher Chacon, a seeker of truth from the Organization of Scientific Investigation and Research. Alongside a team of experts, he delved into the paranormal intricacies of the hotel. Physical, psychological, and electrical examinations were conducted, leaving no stone unturned. 12 hours in isolation within the bedroom that's, doing all the bad things, monitoring the environment for any spectral stirrings. Infrared technology and night vision equipment were brought in, but despite the diligence, the source of the haunting remained elusive. Which, okay, we'll let you be. Ghosty ladies can do what you want, I would like to live.
Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood, guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking in your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting in your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here, waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do. Number 3 on this list is the Pfister Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Pfister Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits, was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you.
Number 5. Area 51, Nevada. Starting out our list, we have the most obvious entry. In the American state of Nevada, you will find no shortage of places to go on vacation. Despite being a desert, you will find locations like the Hoover Dam, Red Rock Canyon, and of course, the various casinos and attractions in Las Vegas. Of course, a location that you will not find yourself getting into is the military base located on the salt flats of Groom Lake, which is colloquially known as Area 51. For years, Area 51 has been the subject of conspiracy theories involving everything from government testing to UFO activity. Adding to its mystique is the fact that the US government wouldn't even officially acknowledge that it existed until 2013. Its official use is apparently the testing of experimental aircraft, but the level of security at the base is extremely high, even for a government base. Employees of Area 51 are flown in on a private airline known as Janet Airlines, with Janet being an acronym that stands for just another non-existent terminal. Some former employees have reported getting paid through private companies that they have no involvement with in order to avoid a paper trail linking them to the base. Some theories about the purpose of Area 51 include it being used to develop energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative, to develop time travel technology, and most infamously, for studying, storing, and reverse engineering the remains of crashed alien ships, including those that were found at the Roswell crash site. As it is a closed-off and secret government facility, tourists are of course not allowed to get into the site, with signs around the perimeter promising prosecution and possibly even deadly force against trespassers. Of course, this hasn't stopped alien enthusiasts from making the journey to Nevada Nevada to see the number of Area 51 and alien-adjacent attractions, such as bus tours of the extraterrestrial highway, the black mailbox, and the outskirts of this secret government facility. Number 4. The Princess Theatre, Alberta. In the Canadian city of Edmonton, Alberta, there is no shortage of movie theaters with multiple malls housing multiple multiplexes, enabling local cinema lovers to watch the latest in entertainment. However, for many years, the crown jewel for movie lovers in Edmonton was not the Cineplex in West Edmonton Mall, or even the Garneau Theatre, which shows independent and classic films. No, for many years, the most classic of the theaters was the Princess Theatre on White Avenue. Built in 1914 for a then staggering $75,000, this 3-story single-screen theater would show moving pictures, concerts, and vaudeville acts, while also having a basement billiards parlor for those not interested in the shows. The theater was known for implementing extremely novel and modern elements, such as a fireproof projection room, an electric time projection clock, an electronic ticketing machine, forced air ventilation, and even refrigerated fountain beverages. The theater was soon drawn into economic hardship and was forced to construct rental apartments on the upper and lower floors. One of these apartment renters was soon met with a tragic and disturbing end. According to local legend, an engaged woman lived in one of the upper apartments, but mere days before she was due to be wed, she was scorned by her fiancé. She was found hanging from the rafters while dressed in her wedding dress. In the years that followed, employees and patrons of the princess reported seeing a ghostly woman wearing a white dress who would suddenly appear and disappear, ascending the theater's grand staircase, wandering its ornate gold-leafed halls, or even hovering over the projection room. The princess was a staple for local cinema lovers, as well as fans of the paranormal for decades. But if you were interested in taking in a show or catching a glimpse of the ghostly bride, you may have missed your window, as the theater closed its doors after 108 years of operation in mid-2022. No new owners or plans for the historical theater have been announced, and the doors remained locked to the public, with only the ghosts still residing inside of this historic building. Number 3. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Virginia. In a world that seems to constantly be on the brink of disaster, it is comforting to know that the US government has a safe location where the elite and powerful will be safe from destruction they most likely caused. Such is the purpose of the US Department of Homeland Security operated base located near Bluemont, Virginia. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the High Point Special Facility, has been in operation since the late 1800s, when it was used as a simple weather station. In 1928, the observatory building became President Calvin Coolidge's summer White House, before being used as a civilian public service facility where conscientious objectors could serve the government during World War II without having to go into conflict. In 1959, an underground facility was completed and designated Area B. The other buildings that were referred to as Area A became training facilities for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Around this time, it became a relocation site for high-level civilian and military officials in the event of a national disaster, such as an attack or massive natural disaster. It plays a major role in many of the United States government's contingency plans for maintaining the continuity of government. It has a high-frequency radio system, which connects it to most federal public safety agencies, which allows the president to access and use the emergency alert system so that they can broadcast emergency alerts or warnings. An example of its use was on September 11, 2001, when the majority of congressional leadership were taken from Washington by helicopter and evacuated to Mount Weather. The National Art Gallery has also developed a program that would have the country's most valuable paintings helicoptered over to the facility in the event of an attack, in order to make sure important cultural pieces are preserved in the event of an attack that would otherwise destroy them. Obviously, this site is off limits to all but the most high level of people, and it is not open for tourists. But if you are nearby and see a large group of frantic-looking officials arriving by helicopter, or you see a message on TV from the president being broadcast from this facility, be very afraid, as it means that something terrifying and horrible has or is about to occur. Number 2. Boblo Island Amusement Park, Ontario. North America has no shortage of amusement parks for families and thrill seekers alike to visit. The Canadian province of Ontario has several to choose from, including Canada's Wonderland, Great Wolf Lodge, and Splashdown Niagara. One theme park that that you won't be able to buy a ticket for, however, is the Boblo Island Amusement Park, located on the island of Bois Blanc, just above the mouth of the Detroit River. The park was opened in 1898 and used a ferry system to service guests from Ontario and Detroit and bring them to the island, where they had a variety of attractions to keep them occupied and having fun. Some of these included the Falling Star, a log flume, a theater, a sky tower, a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a carousel, and a dance hall, financed by Henry Ford himself. It also had 3 roller coasters, the Screamer, the Nightmare, and the Sky Streak. It also had Boblo's scoot boats, which were essentially aquatic bumper cars. The park operated for many years before eventually closing down for financial reasons in late 1993. There are still ferries that operate in order to get island residents on and off the island, but the now abandoned amusement park has been declared off limits by the property owners. Of course, the dilapidated carousel building, dance pavilion, and sky tower have since proven to be too appealing for urban explorers to keep away from, and the eerie overgrown site still sees a variety of visitors. Like any good amusement park, it of course has a reputation for being haunted by a variety of ghosts. My personal favorite of the ghost stories is the story of Smiley the Magician. Back when the theater still operated and showed a variety of different performers, one of the most consistently booked performers of the 30s and 40s was a magician named Smiley Smilovich. Smiley was an old-school magician who had trained with Houdini in the late 20s and was known for his seemingly death-defying tricks. One of his most famous tricks was a metamorphosis trick, where he would put a trunk on stage, climb into it, lock it, and then have the trunk set on fire. He would escape through a trap door, the trunk would burn away, revealing that he had escaped, and the crowd would go wild. One day he was doing this trick as usual, but when he locked himself in the trunk, he had a heart attack and died. The trunk was set on fire, and the audience was left in terror as Smiley's body burned in front of them. Ever since then, Smiley's ghost would apparently haunt the theater, being sighted watching shows that were performed there, showing a special interest in magic shows. In the years since the park's closure, the occasional rumor of the magician being spotted has come up from the various urban explorers checking out the overgrown buildings. Would you ever be brave enough to explore Boblo Island Amusement Park? And if you did, would you be on the lookout for spectral magicians? Number 1. North Brother Island, New York. The North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in the East River of New York City. The island remained uninhabited until 1885, with the only trace of humanity being a small lighthouse that was erected in 1869. The island began seeing more use in 1885 when the Riverside Smallpox Hospital moved from Roosevelt Island to North Brother, when their mission expanded to treating and isolating victims of other quarantinable diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and especially polio. In 1904, a steamship called the General Slocum was set ablaze, and over 1,000 people perished, either from the fire or from drowning while trying to escape, and ended up washing ashore on the island. One of the most famous residents at the hospital was Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary, who was confined on the island for 20 years until her death in 1938, after having been declared a public health menace for infecting between 51 and 122 people while working as a cook. As public health measures like vaccines began to be adopted in the 30s and 40s, the need for a quarantine hospital lessened to the point where the hospital was closed. It was converted into housing for war veterans who were going to school in the city following World War II, before being converted into a rehabilitation facility for young people suffering from substance abuse issues. But it was closed in 1963 due to the cost of upkeep and the widespread corruption of the staff. In the years since, it was considered for a variety of purposes, including housing for the homeless and an extension of the jail at Rikers Island. But the danger of the unmarked manholes and the advanced dilapidation of the buildings, which are mostly collapsed and overrun by poison ivy, resulted in such ideas being abandoned. It was eventually decided that the site would serve as a bird sanctuary for herons and other wading shorebirds. Although many of the original 25 buildings are still standing in some shape or form, it has been made off limits to the public and is only available for supervised visits for those intending to go ashore for, quote, compelling academic and scientific purposes. With its history of confinement and death, perhaps it is best that this site has been deemed unfit for public visitation, although the history of the island is indeed compelling.